The official question breakdown is here on the left. They say around 60% of the content comes directly from the data management body of knowledge. And then 20% of the questions ask you to extrapolate based on that content. So it's not directly from the book, but rather asking you to apply those concepts in new ways. And then they say about 20% of the questions are really not found in the book, but in fact, practical, multidisciplinary, or asking you to apply your knowledge from being a data practitioner to new scenarios. I think based on my experience taking the CDMP and the experience of my colleagues, it's actually closer to around 80% of the content that's directly from the book. 10% of the questions that are kind of the next level of difficulty. And then finally, 10% that you're not going to find in the book, but instead you might be able to answer based on your outside knowledge. So that's great news. I think the fundamentals level is even more approachable, perhaps, than it seems. I know for those of us studying, the book can feel very intimidating. It's so extensive. And I think the great news is it's an open book test. So you can really rely on using your study time to build up your understanding of DAMA's worldview, how they look at different topics across the chapters. And you don't have to rely on your memory for all the little details like specific names of regulations or specific ISO codes. You can look those up and still do well in the test if you have a good understanding of the fundamentals. Hopefully that helps you in terms of some advice and test preparation guidance. Okay, just really quickly, sorry, this slide's a little bit confusing. What we're saying here is we usually recommend people do the ebook as their quote unquote one book for the exam. And if you didn't know, DAMA's one book really means one instance of book, like one iteration of book. So you can't use both the ebook and the physical book. And so we tell people definitely try to get your hands on a ebook because you can use Control F. We still have people pass it with the physical book. It's definitely doable. It does require you to have a better baseline understanding of the concepts in order to get a top score. So just for comparison's sake, I took the exam once with the physical book. I scored an 82, and then I took it with the ebook and I scored a 92. So I don't know that I necessarily got 10 points smarter, but I think the ebook helped me raise my score by 10 points. So that could be pretty significant, although they're both master level passes, so they're in the same level. Anyway, it's up to you. And if you do use your ebook, then that needs to be on a different device than your exam. So not a secondary monitor, literally a second laptop or a desktop or Kindle device. Sometimes people will put the book on an iPad or a Kindle. And then for taking the exam, you need to be using the Chrome browser with the Honor Lock plugin installed. Essentially, it's a secondary device. We like to think of this as a secondary device because you want to think about your book device as your main device. It is hard to transfer your book once you've taken those notes. It won't save the notes. You actually only need Honor Lock on the computer where you're taking the exam. Honor Lock's kind of like not the optimal plugin. I mean, it's the DAMA selected plugin, but it doesn't have a way to monitor your device with the book. You have to submit the honor code saying that you will only use your DMBOK on the second device and you are to turn off Wi-Fi on the device with the book. It's a very doable exam. There should be no issues with following those guidance. And just scrolling back through the chat here, when you buy the CDMP, you can then take it at any time, like 24/7. It's proctored by AI. So essentially, the Honor Lock is the AI proctor. It will film you and record the audio in your environment. So it only flags the recording for human review if there was some kind of discrepancy. We don't really hear about people having issues too often. But anyway, you just want to be in a quiet environment, like at a home office or a quiet meeting room at your workplace, perhaps. That's the first thing. The exams now only last for 12 months. So you do need to take it within 12 months of purchasing it. If you study for 12 months, that would be non-optimal. You're definitely going to forget the things that you started learning at the beginning. I would say try to aim for a study duration of no more than 3 to 4 months. And with all the work that Data Strategy Pros has put into our study materials, I feel like no one should be studying longer than really 4 months. And again, if you do end up extending your study duration, it's going to hurt you because it is really hard to maintain all of that information in your brain at one time. You're better off just giving it a try and taking the exam. So don't procrastinate too much. Don't leave it for 12 months and then let your exam run out. So in terms of test taking strategy, to answer Charles' question, the guidance for sitting for the exam is making sure that you get to the end. That's going to be your number one priority because every question has the same weight. They're all 1 point each. There's no penalty for getting a question wrong. Your first strategy, if you feel like you're stuck on a question, should be to guess. That way, with time management, you'll make it to the end of the exam and just make sure that you get there and you don't leave any questions blank. And then at the end of the time, you can go back and look up any questions that you struggled with. The exam platform does not have any kind of flag, so there's no digital flagging for questions. However, DAMA is aware of this and they allow you as a test taker to have a piece of scratch paper. So as you're going through the exam, you should write down the number of any question that you want to come back later and look it up. So anything where you're guessing or you're not sure, just jot it down. And then at the end of your time, you should go back and address those questions. Just to help you a little bit with my experience of taking the test, I'm like a very fast reader, I guess. I finished the CDMP in about 45 minutes, which means I had literally half the time left over to go back and check my answers. So if you are a bit of a slower reader, maybe you're taking the ESL exam, you're still likely going to have time left over at the end because the questions tend to be short. Your guidelines should be answering the questions in less than a minute. Actually, for the regular exam, if you answer every question in an average of 54 seconds or less, you're guaranteed to have at least some time left over. For the ESL exam, you want to target 66 seconds or less per question. Once you start getting close to the minute mark on a question, then I would say guess, write down the answer choice, come back at the end. And that way you'll guarantee yourself time management so you can answer all the questions. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but I hope that was helpful. So definitely utilize the practice exam as well. DAMA provides you with a free practice through the same platform as the official exam, which is called Brightspace. So you can get used to the way that the exam is structured. Like it'll give you 5 questions at a time. It'll give you a little alert when you've used half of your time, and it'll give you another one, I think when you have 5 minutes left. At the end of time, it will automatically submit your score. So you don't have to worry about like hitting the submit button. If you just let your time run out, it will submit for you. I actually recommend that. Definitely use your full time no matter what, because you don't want to miss a question just because you decided to submit the exam early and you could have found the right answer in the book, but you just were like, I'm hungry or whatever, I need to move on. Absolutely budget to use the full time, whether it's the 90 minutes for the regular exam or the 110 minutes for the ESL. So anyway, back to the practice exam. For those that are looking to optimize their score, try to get as high a score as you possibly can. I would prioritize doing the practice exam until you're getting it 100% correct every time. And the reason for that is these practice questions, a handful of them will come up again on the real exam. So the official practice questions from DAMA, you might see them again. And if you've memorized all of them to the extent that you're able to answer the practice questions correctly every time, when you see those questions come up on the real exam, not only are you guaranteed a point for answering that question correctly, but you can also answer it quickly once you've identified that it's a question you've seen before. It gives you guaranteed point and also saves you time that you can reuse again on answering challenging questions. Sid says he saw 15 questions from the practice exam on the real exam. I feel like I saw 3 or 4. So you must have gotten really lucky, Sid, with getting a lot of those practice questions. But yeah, regardless, it's definitely a positive to study extensively with that practice. Niels asks about Udemy. So obviously we are a competitor to Udemy. I think the biggest differentiator for data strategy professionals is our practice questions have an explanation and a citation for every single one. And we have 150 questions available for the CDMP, plus 50 additional questions available at the specialist level. So if you choose to go on to specialist, we have 1 question set at least per specialist domain. I've heard really bad things about the quality of the Udemy questions. Honestly, they are a lot cheaper. So you could buy them just to see, because they're cheaper. But at the same time, if you're using that as a study resource and they're actually like leading you astray because they're not giving you the correct answers, they don't include a citation, so you can't really easily verify them in the book, etc. For those who don't know, Udemy is a marketplace. There's a lot of different ranges of quality available. And yeah, sometimes I think people don't really understand the CDMP when they are trying to do a quick cash grab on Udemy. So if you want to spend your money on that and just try it, go for it. But I guarantee you that data strategy professionals questions, they've been extensively quality controlled. We are 100% sure that the questions are reflective of the book and the ranges of difficulty present on the real exam. Obviously, I'm biased, but we did try really hard to make them a good study tool versus who knows what you can find out there in the world. So Gabriella asks, can you take the exam after a month? And I would say it depends on how much time you have to study and also how much you knew about data management before you started studying. So personally, it took me a really long time to study for the exam when I was working. So I would study in the mornings and sometimes in the evenings. And it took me months because I didn't know anything about data management. I was a data scientist. And there was also really no study resources available, which is why I was inspired to start the company. So I think if you already have a background in data management, you know about data governance and data quality, data modeling, or you're unemployed or you have some time off work, and you can dedicate that time to reviewing, then I think you could study for the exam and pass it within a month. The other thing to consider is, what is your goal score? You only need a score of 60 or above to pass the CDMP Fundamentals Exam and call yourself a CDMP. So it's actually very, very attainable, because if you think about it, just with random guessing, you're likely to get a score of 20%. Like literally every question is choose the single best answer out of 5. So just with some experience and planning, some knowledge of the content, a lot of people will pass the exam on their first try. So I think it's definitely reasonable to do that within a month. That being said, if you are trying to move on to the practitioner or the master level, or you want to brag about a higher level pass of the associate level, then I think probably it's better to study for 3 months. That's usually what we recommend. And I think that's more doable for practitioners who are trying to fit this in around their work. Yeah, okay, just in case you didn't know this, only the first 14 chapters of the data management body of knowledge are tested on the CDMP Fundamentals Exam. So that's chapters 1 through 14. And as you can see here, the range of the chapters in terms of the importance on the exam has a high variance. So some chapters like data governance, data quality, data modeling, and metadata management are each 11% of the question. So on average, 11 questions for the test, versus these other areas, unfortunately, are kind of less important. So you should absolutely use this as a guide for planning your studies.